Welcome to Capes, Cows and Masks, the show where we uncover the world of soups and science fiction. I'm Jake Hart, and I'm joined by...
David Oscar.
Happy to be back, Dave. After our last couple of episodes where we had a thorough breakdown of the Fantastic Four movies, and little did we know, Kevin Feige had something up his sleeve for us. Everybody knows what we're talking about, and we thought we would have to do a big episode covering everything that was announced at the Disney Investor Day 2020. Well, not everything, just the Marvel stuff, people. That'll keep us occupied plenty enough after watching that 4-hour Investor Day. It was very tiresome, but totally worth it to see what's coming in the pipeline, not just for Marvel, but Lucasfilm, Pixar, and all other great Disney properties they got going on. But Dave, how are you doing, man?
I'm doing good. In about 5 minutes, we're going to cut to a Pixar short, just to give yourselves a bit of a break in between all this news. And there'll also be a song you might cut to, before we come to me sometimes as well, just to give you a bit, stretch your legs, go get a drink.
But you can't watch the short. You just have to watch a countdown.
Oh, yeah, we should get those clips of us sending voice clips on our social chats which was Kenobi, I think, wasn't it? That they had something from that and they didn't show us. And we were like, you cowards, how dare you? It's a great, so you'll get all of our reactions to the Marvel stuff because they were nice enough to show all of that. And yeah, I do want to mention that actually, because I think if they hadn't shown anything, I think there would have been riots in the street. I think they knew, they were like, we have to show all the Marvel stuff. Otherwise there will be, protests outside Disneyland or something.
Yeah. And as we know, a lot of the Marvel stuff is much further in production and development than the Star Wars stuff. So, we sort of expected trailers and dates and announcements and all sorts of wonderful things. But before we get into that, there's been a huge, big news week, man. Like, you think this is going to take up most of the day. I mean, let's get straight to it then. And that's Warner Brothers. Or Warner Media, AT&T, whatever. I'm not really too sure who runs this company at the minute, and we'll get into that because I think that definitely ties into this story.
Ask Denise Villeneuve. He'll tell you.
Yeah, ask him. He'll give you his opinions on them. And that is that they have decided to push. Not push. They have decided to release all their 2021 major blockbuster slate simultaneously in theaters, as well as debuting on the HBO Max streaming service, which is exclusively only in the US. This was huge news for the industry. A lot of different opinions, a lot of people who are on board with this decision, but there's also a lot of controversy from the industry itself, creators, filmmakers coming out and calling out Warner Brothers' decision on this. I also think maybe the way Warner Brothers handled this announcement was, in my opinion, done quite poorly by not, speaking to the creators and the studios beforehand. But what do you make of all this? I mean, yet again, more drama surrounding the studio Warner Brothers. What do you think's going on over there, man? And what do you think of this huge decision to be like, okay, we're going to whack all these movies, which I believe is like 17 or 18 movies. And if you're listening to us, you're a comic book fan, and that includes the Suicide Squad in there. Other science fiction films like Dune, The Matrix 4, Godzilla vs. Kong, huge, big blockbuster cinema movies, and they're going to the small screen. So what do you think, Dave?
I wasn't massively surprised by it. I think it's interesting, isn't it? Throughout this entire year, we've had the conversation of, Warner Brothers being the kind of studio which was supporting film, and they looked like they were the most in favor of the theatrical experience, especially compared to companies like Universal. And, Disney was kind of walking that line. They tried the Premier Access strategy. So, they were looking very much like the villains of all of this. While Warner Brothers was there with Tenet and, holding on to Wonder Woman, looking like they were, trying to hold on to it as much as they can. So, I think there's two ways to go at this. There's, or maybe three ways even, but there's the sort of business head side of things, and there's, the realistic head, but also, the film fan in you. And I think that, I wasn't surprised because, at the end of the day, they do have a massive streaming service, but they have to get off the ground. And, we're obviously going to be talking about Disney Plus, and they had at least the benefit of having 2 to 3 years, maybe even more advantage to get their streaming service up and running. And even though it's only now that they're really starting to officially announce all the big projects that they've been running up to, and we'll begin them within the next year, 2, 3 years, they've had the benefit of always saying, this is the content that's come in, this is what we're bringing to you. So they've always had that advantage. Whereas, HBO Max, even though they've got a few originals, they were lacking in that sort of original movies, and a big original series. Even though they've had like big ones like Raised by Wolves and, Lovecraft, etc. I think there's just been obviously a lot of hurdles in their way. There's loads of stuff people have said about, the name of it, whether it's right, whether the worldwide access is, a good strategy. The fact that, a lot of people in America already have HBO. They might have it as part of like mobile and television plans. So that makes it more complicated. So I think it makes sense for them business-wise. I can see exactly what they're thinking. They're like, we've got all this pre-made, ready-to-go content. We need a way to sell our service. And there's a pandemic going on right now, so we can't exactly go, hey, let's just go make a massive blockbuster movie. They need to use the assets that they've got. So I can completely understand that. And they aren't, again, with the, the fan side of things, they're not going, right, well, this is only exclusively on HBO Max. It's a simultaneous release. So again, I think, I do like to take them at their word. I think a lot of people, when they do say, oh, it's the death of cinema, these are the end of days, obviously I will get involved in that chat a bit for the sake of like, not so much a joke, but, you just getting involved in the theatrics of the situation. But, I do think that the cinematic experience will survive, and I do think that all these studios want to continue it. As Bob Chapek said in the Disney Plus, announcement, he was like, let's be clear, we made like over $1 billion at the box office in 2019. That's not going to go away. And I think it's very much the same for Warner Brothers. So I do see this as a temporary thing that they're hopefully doing. Whether it does prove successful and simultaneous continues to be a thing, I still don't think it means that it's bad for the film industry. I don't think it's necessarily bad for the cinematic and theatrical experience. It will change it by no means. But a lot of people have said that change has needed to come for a long time, again, despite the pandemic. And something, lastly, I want to mention, which I hadn't considered up until recently, and two things really, actually, which were brought to light by watching a few like industry experts. I watched like a few opinions from people like Chris Stuckman, who I really enjoy, and they brought up some good points. So I was like, yeah, that's a good point, actually. So, one, everyone's saying, oh, well, why release that? Why, we haven't seen a single thing of that. Like, oh, we'll just hold on to it. But, when I thought about it, it does make sense. This is debt on the company. They can't hold on to these projects for that long because they are accruing debt on it. It's a cost to the studio, which is like a minus to them. So they're in credit, or whatever way you want to put it. So they have to then, repay that debt. It's the same as if you bought a sofa and then you didn't pay off the finance on the sofa. They need to pay back what they've spent on that movie, and it incurs interest and stuff if they hold on to that. So that to me makes sense. And also I think Chris Stuckman was saying about how the cinematic experience might change, because now that they don't have as much leverage on the studios, maybe theatre chains won't be paying as many premiums and as big a share on the ticket price, because they're not the sole owners of the property. So because it is elsewhere, it's on television screens as well, maybe the studios won't take as big a cut of the ticket prices, which will be better for cinemas because they can make a bit more profit. So like I said, I sympathize obviously with the filmmakers and everything like that. It's not the way they intended this to come out, and I think it is a bit drastic to say all 17 films and not consult them. That's a really crappy thing to do. But from the business side of things, I can fully understand.
Yeah, I'm with you and I'm not with you. Like, as you said up top, you got to come from this from many different angles, and all I can say is I'm so glad I'm not one of these executives making this decision, because the way I look at it is that it's almost a no-win situation here. You're just not going to please everyone. I do think, in regards to the theatrical experience, I don't think this is the death of cinema. However, I do think, yes, it will change, and I do think it will hurt the cinema a bit. Partly because I get the idea that you need to sell this streaming service, but that's also your own fault, because you should have had, as a studio, multiple films and original series lined up for launch. I believe we spoke about it when it first launched, that there's really not a lot on there apart from pre-existing material, which also doesn't stay on the service forever. Do you know what I mean? Like, the films are coming and going every month on the service, including series, and which is most surprising. All like the Harry Potter, the DC stuff. These are IP that you own. Why are they coming off the service that you also own? For me, I'm not sure. It's probably got to do something with contracts with other networks and stuff like that. But, whatever. But so you should have, if you had that, you should have been already developing some spin-off shows of the Harry Potter world, some more DC shows. It's great that we're getting Peacemaker from James Gunn, but I think you need more than one.
Yeah.
And that Gotham one that we're getting from Matt Reeves as well. That's not enough to, hold a streaming service. You just have to look at what Netflix and Disney Plus are doing and all the stuff they're announcing. And, they're fine. They got plenty on the plate for them. But I think this is a bad move, relying on all your theatrical films that you would plan to release. Now, on the other side of things, on the business side, yeah, I get it. You can't hold these films forever. Like you said, it's just costing you more money not releasing these films. So why not put it on a service your own? I'm all for that. But it's not so much... I think I'm more dubious of the people, the general public. I think a lot of people, especially this past year, has shown a lot of people, why would I go to the cinema when I can just watch it from the comfort of my own home? And I'm really scared that more and more people will get into that mentality of just being comfortable being at home. Now, I get if you're, I'm not going to criticize someone for if they don't feel safe to go to the cinemas, or still, don't feel really safe to join the world as we know it back again, as we're slowly starting to reopen. I get that. I totally get that. I'm never going to criticize someone for that. That's your personal opinion. But what I don't want is people, for the sake of it, just be like, I'll just watch it at home. Who cares about the sort of cinema thing? And that's the mentality I don't want to get into, because that's when the cinemas will be in trouble. And I've been saying for a while, and this year has basically cemented it, the problem I have with the future of cinema is that, you and me both love big blockbusters. I mean, that's why we do this show. We talk about the big Marvel movies and stuff. But I fear that's what the cinemas are going to just purely rely on now. And that the smaller, mid-budget, small-budget films that that the dramas and stuff like that, I don't think we're going to see those in the cinema anymore. It's going to be much more viable to whack those on a streaming service. So in that regard, in terms of, I go back to my allegory of Star Wars of the buffet, there's not going to be a lot of different meals in the cinema. You're only going to have the standard stuff. So that's where I come from this. And in regards to how they dealt with the creators and the filmmakers, I personally think that was appalling. Denis Villeneuve has come out and said that he found out the moment that it was announced to the world.
Yeah.
And I think that's so bad. That's so bad, especially for a company like Legendary, who did Dune and Godzilla vs. Kong. I found out that they actually fronted the budget, 75% of the budget for those films. So, they have a majority stake in those films. And without only giving them, I think it was a 30-minute heads up before announcing to the world, I think that's despicable.
Yeah.
I think that's appalling business work, personally.
The cinemas, I think, had, a lot of exhibitors had the same thing. They had like an hour, 30 minutes heads up, which is, really, really shoddy, I think. And it does go to show that, like he said, they're being run by a telecommunications company, which is the unfortunate thing. So as much crap as people can throw at Disney, at the end of the day, Disney is not invested in anything else. And I said yesterday when we were recording the Monday Lorians, we talked about how one of my friends, Steph, had mentioned, oh, well, Disney could easily go into debt, or they could, go bust because they're spending so much money on these shows and their only major revenue is from entertainment, so from theme parks, merchandise, and theatrical releases, which again just goes, just it's whether you've got faith in those business models. But at the end of the day, that is their only business models, which is good because it shows that they're just invested in entertainment. The only problem you've got now is that you have got a company which is partly invested into telecommunications, internet, TV, cable, and selling mobile phones, and so that is a real unfortunate part of the way that company is now being run, and I think does have a lot to do with how they're going to make decisions and have made decisions, as Denis Villeneuve rightly pointed out. And I think that hopefully, I really do, I don't want to put too much pressure on people, but I really, really do think that it's time for people to step up in terms of, not like us, there's not much we can do, unfortunately, but I think actors and big Hollywood people, they need to do something. They need to stand up. Like Christopher Nolan, you left him on his own, guys, like he was there fighting for cinemas where, like I said, obviously there were lots of people who were fighting for it, but I think they really need to stand up now. And I think even people like Patty Jenkins, well, she got to lose. She's going over to Disney anyway because she's doing a Star Wars film. Call them out. Like she's made Wonder Woman now. Yeah, she wants to do Wonder Woman 3. But, if I was a lot of these filmmakers, I would just do a John Boyega and just go for it because I think it's going to be, better for their career.
I think the only reason Patty Jenkins is not really calling them out is because she got a nice $10 million payoff for putting Wonder Woman on HBO Max. And though, every tweet she's been doing recently, promoting Wonder Woman, read between the lines in her tweets.
Yeah.
She clearly wants you to see this in the cinema.
Oh, yeah.
She is not happy. She's not happy with the decision. I guarantee you.
That's my only other biggest concern. Like on the cinema thing quickly, I'll just say that I do think, like you said, I think that there's potential. Obviously, cinema experience will change. I think a lot of audiences, I think there will be those people who will be like, oh, I'll just watch it at home. But I think those people have always been there anyway. I think there will by no means be a bigger percentage of that now than there was before. But, and let's face it, piracy was always a thing anyway. A lot of people were like, I'll just wait for it to come out on DVD. So I don't see that audience really changing. There's always been those people who complain, oh, well, I don't like somebody behind me, crunching on popcorn. So there's always been that factor. And I think that those people, again, are just the loudest voices in the scenario. I think the majority of people want to and are eager to go back. But like you said, I think understandably, they just want to wait until it's safe. So I think come a year's time, I think the majority will go back. And I think the biggest revenue, again, is families and children and, big groups of people. I think all of them will want to go. So I think that, again, it's just that they're waiting for that time to want to go back to the cinema. And I think that even middle set movies could go back because, again, it's important for things like awards season and stuff like that. Like industry professionals will want to see these films on a big screen, etc. And, so I think that will still be there. In some capacity. It's just like I said, if it's a simultaneous release, it might just be different the way that the people have an option as to how they watch it. But hopefully that doesn't mean that cinemas then become crazy expensive. So to me, it's now a crazy situation in which you're like, oh, it's $15 to watch at home or £20 to watch at home. Fair enough, you're paying for that privilege, but then you shouldn't be paying £15 or £20 to watch it in the cinema because that's the situation we're facing at the moment with, me and yourself. We're having to cross channels to watch like a certain movie. And I hope it doesn't get to that situation as well, in which like to see a certain movie, you have to like travel ages, and and it means paying double the price because it's now a big ticket thing, which again is not good for the industry. You need competitiveness. You need to have competitive pricing, and I think that's again where HBO has failed. If they wanted to do this simultaneous release, well, in the UK we have a very viable Sky and Now TV package. Put it on there, but for some reason Wonder Woman 84 is coming to like Sky in like March or January, and I'm like, February or January or something like that. I'm like, if you want to do this simultaneous thing, get it straight on there. What's taking so long? It's just ridiculous.
I believe, because Wonder Woman 84 is premiering on HBO Max on Christmas Day.
Yeah.
And it will be on there for a month, and then it'll come off HBO Max and then available for PVOD. One last thing about this whole stuff as well, in regards to the actors involved, though, because I was reading some articles and seeing some people who brought up some very valid points. Actors, a lot of the time, it's not the initial payment they get from the movie, but it's all the royalties they get afterwards from ticket sales and stuff like that.
Exactly.
Which is all negotiated in contracts beforehand. And for a lot of actors of these films, they've been like, well, what happens to me now? Where do I, like, granted, look, these people are millionaires. They have a lot of money. I appreciate that. But I still believe if they've done the work and they've signed a contract, they are entitled to whatever they've signed for. Do you know what I mean? So for a lot of actors, I feel as if they've also been given a bit of a shitter and not been, been told really what's going to happen. How's it going to work? There's definitely going to be a bunch of contract changes at Warner Brothers now. Do you know what I mean? Wow, that HR person's going to have a mouthful.
I think the assumption is that the goalposts are changing. So where it would previously be you need to earn 300 million to get this bonus, it would now be 150 million, something like that, which I think, again, makes sense. But also my biggest concern as well is when they say this whole, it will be in cinemas where they're open. And again, me just thinking with my, being in Wales, UK mentality, I'm like, I hope that doesn't have repercussions on the world and the rest of the audiences, because it is going to be really shitty if you get in a situation in which America can watch The Matrix or Godzilla versus Kong, and we're just there like, oh, we've gone into a 5th lockdown and all our cinemas are closed, So that, I think, would be, again, they need to make those relationships and those connections with UK streaming and distribution services, because it's ridiculous. If you're going to do this at home model, do it everywhere. You've got to sort something out, especially in somewhere which has very viable and has the majority. Again, if you don't have HBO Max here, just give it to Netflix. You can make a deal with Netflix. I'm sure they'll happily buy the content because they've done it with plenty of TV shows before. So that's my biggest concern as well, is the whole, like, will cinemas be open in this country? We don't know. That's the problem. They're like, oh, well, where cinemas are open? Well, where cinemas are going to be open? We don't know. That's the problem.
Yeah, there's no clarity on anything, especially in this country at the minute. And, Netflix offered WB about, I think it was $200 million for Godzilla vs. Kong. Do you know? Should have taken it, I think. That's a nice chunk of change you might not have gotten. So,
no, exactly, yeah.
Hey, we do need to move on because we've still got loads to cover. Let's get into the bit of news that spawned 1,000 memes over the week. And that is the ever-expanding crazy cast of the next Spider-Man film. Plenty of rumors, plenty of rumors. But what we have confirmed is that joining Jamie Foxx as Electro will be Alfred Molina's Dr. Octopus from Sam Raimi's Spider-Man 2 film. There's also some huge rumors out there. It's all but confirmed that past Peter Parkers, Tobey Maguire, Andrew Garfield will be joining, as well as Kirsten Dunst as Mary Jane, Emma Stone as Gwen Stacy, and really surprising enough, this is a rumor, people, but I hope this one's true, Charlie Cox as Matt Murdock, a.k.a. Daredevil, from the Netflix show. So, Dave, I'm going to start with you. What do you think about all these crazy casting announcements? I mean, we already knew that this is going to be a crazy film, but it just keeps on getting bigger and bigger.
Yeah, in some ways, the more I think about it, it's like it gets bigger and bigger, but then I also think it gets somewhat smaller and more refined in some ways. Even though the cast gets crazy and stuff like that, it's kind of like an Avengers film or something like Civil War, where you're like, oh my God, they keep adding all this Avengers cast to it. And then it just becomes a sub facto Avengers film instead of a Captain America film. So I kind of see it like that. And I think the more you think about maybe how the storyline could go, I think a lot of the speculation is that Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield will come in like the third act. So stuff like that, we've seen with Spider-Verse, even though that had 5 different Spider-Men, it was still a Miles Morales film. So, the more I thought about it, the more I thought, well, yeah, as long as they treat this story right, and as long as it starts off, about Peter, and then eventually this whole thing unravels, and obviously WandaVision is going to be a part of that. Kevin Feige confirmed at the Disney Plus Investor Day that, those 3 properties, WandaVision, Spider-Man, and Doctor Strange are going to be this multiverse story. I think as long as that's handled correctly, which I have faith in them doing, I think that it's not going to be too crazy. I think that possibly we will just get glimpses, maybe a bit like Days of Future Past from X-Men. We had all of that cast in there, but, it was like we only had 1 or 2 lines from some of the classic, cast members. So, Halle Berry, etc. And then you just saw Famke Janssen right at the end of the film. So it might be that kind of thing that we end up getting. And if it is like the big climactic third act battle, it could work. And obviously they have been building up Sinister Six. It's something that they wanted to do for a while. So if it's a way for them to do Sinister Six in an effective way, I'm on board with it. Because before I was just like, again, the Amazing Spider-Man, I was just like, well, you're just going to throw in some random Doc Ock and expect us to be like, oh yeah, Sinister Six. So this, I think, is a clever way to do it. Just be like, well, let's just take all the successful versions of these characters we've had before and do it that way. And you've got the excuse of, if that character was lame before, well, they're just from a different universe and they're alive, or they're, they're a better version than they were before in this version. So I'm more on board with it now. I think that you're going to see Alfred Molina and you're instantly like, yeah, I know who that is. I instantly know the tragedy he's been through. I instantly, love this character. He's a great actor anyway. So, I'm always going to, I loved his performance as Doc Ock. And, obviously I don't think people weren't in that time frame of, being like, oh, let's see him again, because it was in a different time of superhero movies. But yeah, I'm happy to see him return as a Sam Raimi Spider-Man fan. And I think that the more I learn about this, the more that it doesn't just seem like a random hodgepodge. It does seem like it's kind of like, right, Sinister Six, Spider-Verse, third act. I'm like, yeah, I can see this shaping up now.
I have one question. Is Tom Holland going to be in this film?
I'm not sure if they confirmed that yet.
Yeah. I'm cautiously optimistic about this film. Like, on paper, I'm losing my mind for this film because, had to see Tobey Maguire back and Alfred Molina, Doc Ock. I love those Spider-Man films. Say what you will about the Amazing Spider-Man films, but I do think Andrew Garfield in some parts was actually a really good Spider-Man and a really good Peter Parker. He just wasn't given the best material to work with. So it's exciting to see him. I don't know. I hope I have trust in Marvel because, every time I've had doubts, they always prove me wrong. I'm just hoping that because I love the Into the Spider-Verse animated films so much, and I'm hoping this doesn't diminish the specialness of that film. Do you know what I mean? Because it's very easy for me to sort of look at this and go, Sony are going, that was really successful, let's do it now live action. Do you know what I mean? And that's not the point of that film. That's not why the film works so well. It's due to the creators involved and stuff like that. So there's a lot of things involved in that I think, I don't know if this can be as special as that film, because that was so unique in the way. Although I will agree that because of that film, the concept of the multiverse is not that alien to the general audience anymore. And I do agree with you for bringing in characters we've already been introduced to, like Alfred Molina's Doctor Octopus, Tobey Maguire's Peter Parker, all this. We already have a history with them, so we don't need like an origin story to take up time about who these people are, what their motivations are, etc. But at the same time as well, like you said, that this could, like Civil War did, where it was like a Cap film, but eventually it turned into an Avengers film. I just want there to be a friendly neighborhood Spidey film. Do you know what I mean? I was really excited with the fact that the end of Far From Home, and he's outed as Spider-Man, Peter Parker. And, I thought, oh, that's an amazing, way to go for the next film. So he's got to, fight something in New York, at the same time try to prove his identity as Spider-Man and stuff like that. I thought that in itself could be a great film, but if you add in the multiverse, I don't know how you can fit all these different story threads. I mean, I could understand if you want to bring in Charlie Cox, which is amazing for me because I love that show Daredevil. I would probably argue it's one of my favorite things Marvel has done since the last 10 years or so. And I love his performance. He could be really good in that, but I don't know how you're going to bring him into this with that story thread while also you've got this big multiverse thing going on. It seems like a lot. I am happy to be proven wrong when this film comes out, though, because they probably will prove me wrong. And with all these casts, like you said, they probably won't have big parts either. It might be cameos, couple of lines here and there. But we'll see. Cautiously optimistic I am about this film.
I just love it if they did, like, maybe just prove me wrong, and it turns out Kirsten Dunst is, like, the Mary Jane, and some multiverse thing happens in which just her and Zendaya switch parts, and, like, Tom Holland's Pete Parker's just there, like, oh, I need to be in love with you now. Yeah, she's just there for the entire 2 hours, like, oh, okay.
Even though there's like a 20-year age gap.
Exactly, that's what made it just so hilarious. It'd just be like, I don't really want to, like, get together with you. Tough, you're doing it. Okay. But no, in all seriousness, I never felt that it was going to be a small film as well, because again, I know obviously Sony has their ambitions, but let's not forget that whole Spidey drama that happened about 2 years ago with the rights to Spider-Man. So I think that this film to me has always seemed like Marvel was going to be like, right, we're going to slap our branding on this as heavily as we can. So even though they are borrowing from the Sony Spider-Verse, I think in some ways it always seemed like it was going to be a big film because Sony's party, like, we need to make the most of this film as much as we can, and Marvel's also going to do the exact same thing. They're going to be like, right, let's throw as much Marvel as we can into this film, because it was always like, the Spider-Man films were also Iron Man light sort of films, etc. So I think the only way to get a friendly neighborhood Spider-Man is unfortunately to have a Spider-Man which is either just solely done by Marvel and outside of the other characters, or solely outside of Marvel in terms of like only Sony, and then not with any ambitions of them being like, oh, he meets Venom and all this kind of stuff. So, but in this day and age, I don't know if that's possible for that character anymore. And like you were saying about this,
it's a shame, man.
Yeah,
it's a huge shame. I don't think Spidey's great in these big team ups, but as most Spider-Man fans know, he is best when he's on his own.
Exactly. Yeah. It's why I hold on to the Sam Raimi films even closer now. But I think also we do need to be cautious of the idea of like everyone being like, oh, everyone knows about the multiverse now because of Spider-Verse, because as much as everyone loves that film and it was a big hit and everything, it wasn't like $1 billion movie. It still, made quite a modest amount of money. It wasn't like everyone went to see it. It was like fans went to see it, and Spider-Verse fans, animation fans who won an Oscar, yeah, but it wasn't like, what was it, like 300 million at the box office? So I think they do need to be careful about everyone being like, oh, everyone knows what the Spider-Verse is and stuff. It's like, I don't know if they do. But again, Marvel has proven that they are able to sell it. They can probably tell people a lot from WandaVision. So I don't think that actually Spider-Verse will do much in regards to that. And I hope as well they don't. I think that they would be best doing it as a kind of Tom Holland is this really good deer in the headlights kind of Peter Parker, kind of what's going on. I hope they just play it on that, like, oh my god, all this crazy stuff's happening to me, kind of like what happened in Far From Home. I don't want them to go down the kind of like, what makes you Spider-Man? What makes you, if they steal that from the Spider-Verse film, from Miles Morales, that'll be like a real dick move. I hope they don't do anything like that, because if they're going to do like, oh, what is it to be Spider-Man? Who am I? And all this kind of stuff, then they're just ripping that straight from their own film, which I think would be ridiculous. So hopefully I think that they're just going to make this a fun spider romp, and yeah, we just get all of the fan moments we want out of the way, but hopefully there's still at the core a good story to it, which again, because of the director, I would hope and assume that there is.
Yeah, I mean, and let's not forget, we've also got Doctor Strange in this. He's another element that's been confirmed, and, we heard that he's going to be a new mentor figure for Peter. And this is another thing, like, I'm a bit like...
Yeah, again, I kind of see it as maybe the Thor Ragnarok cameo. I don't know if he will be in it throughout. I think it might just be a one-off scene, or explaining what the multiverse is. I think we will get a lot of Tom Holland and Zendaya dealing with all of this and dealing with other people in the same way, again, as Miles Morales was kind of interacting with the whatever we want to call him, the other universe Spider-Man. I can't remember which exact
Peter B. Parker.
Yeah, which was he 261 Peter or whatever. I imagine something like that will happen, which he's like with certain Spider-Man or a certain character for so long with Zendaya, and then goes along like that. Like you, I wouldn't want it to be like, oh, it's now it's Doctor Strange instead. I hope and I think he would just get like one scene or one or two scenes.
Yeah, plenty to look forward to, and that's going to be a year. We got a year before we see that film, so that's crazy. So I guess at this point, let's take a quick break, catch our breath, and then we're going to come back with all the announcements from Disney Investor Day from Marvel Studios. Catch you in a bit, guys.